Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we have my September wrap-up. So September was kind of a weird month for me. As far as reading goes, it was a fantastic month. I read a lot. I did not finish my TBR, so no reward, but I don't mind that as long as I'm reading. Whether I finish my TBR or not is a moot point. I just want to make sure I was reading, which is what I struggled with in July and August. I wasn't doing anything. I'm still kind of on the edge of autistic burnout, so I've definitely been kind of babying myself a little bit, not pushing myself too hard, but I was a little bit more motivated this month to do stuff in general, and it was definitely more of a balanced month. Like, I didn't just read, I did other things. My husband and I played board games a couple times. He likes WoW, or World of Warcraft, so we played that. So it was definitely more balanced as well. Plus, I got a lot of reading in. So it was a really, really good month. I also, as far as my journal goes, I like the aesthetic of September. It was my birthday month, so I have like this birthday paper, and then it was kind of like this teal and like this purple flower kind of aesthetic, which I really liked. So like I said, I did read every day in September. I didn't count the last 2 days. It's the last day when I'm filming this of September. And I did read a little bit last night, so yesterday, but I really want to get my reading journal done. So the last 2 days, anything I read is just going to go directly on to October and count for the first day of October, because I do keep track of what I read each day. And so yeah, I had a really good, like I said, I read something every day. And on average, I read almost 219 pages a day. So that was really, really good. And we'll go ahead and go through the stats first, and then we'll get into the book. So page count, I read 6,126 pages. 16 of those were fiction. I had 3 nonfiction this month. Normally I only have like 1 nonfiction, so that was really good. 18 were physical. I had 1 digital and no audio, and I didn't have any rereads this month. Now, in the past, like, I have read, what was it? Making Sacrifices by B.C. Harris, and that one was digital, but I didn't count it as such. I just counted it in the physical reads, but this one I specifically got an ebook to read, and so that's why I counted it. Generally, I don't like ebooks at all, but I'll talk more about that book when I get to it. And yeah, for genres, again, these overlap, so there was 19 books, but some of them fit multiple genres. There were 17 fantasy, 5 romance, 2 classics, 2 young adult, 2 science fiction, 2 science, 2 literary, 2 historical, 2 contemporary, 1 middle grade, 1 dystopian, 1 nature, 1 children's, 1 thriller, 1 short stories, 1 mystery, 1 memoir, and 1 essays. And then my top moods, per usual, were adventurous, emotional, and then mysterious. So that was really, really good. And let's see here. So let's go ahead. We'll start. I did not have any DNFs, which would be my 1 stars. I did not have any DNFs, and I did not have any 2 stars, so that was really great. We'll go ahead and start with the 3 books that I did not get to. 2 of them will be rolling over. One of them, like I said, I have already started. I read about 100 pages last night, and I'll probably get around that much read tonight, because I just took it in at bedtime, and just kind of while I was winding down, getting ready to actually go to sleep, I read a little bit. So the first one that's not gonna roll over is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This one was for the prompt of, it was Simba and Nala, and it was childhood sweethearts. So this one will go back into the honey jar, and hopefully we'll get it again. Like I said, this one's not gonna roll over. I'm just gonna put it back on my shelves for now. I would like to read it at some point, but it's so dense. I just wasn't really feeling it. And so yeah, this one's just gonna go straight back onto the shelves. Then we had Vita Nostra, and this is by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko, translated by Julia Meitov Hersey. And so this one was for the prompt of Teen Protag. So this was Treasure Planet, I believe. And so yeah, Teen Protag. and the main character, it's backwards. The main character in this one is a teen, and so this one I do still want to read, and so this one will be rolling over. It's not my mandatory rollover though, because that's kind of my punishment. I have to have one book. That's my mandatory rollover that I read before I start on the next month's TBR. So this one's not going to be that, but I would still like to read it, and I think it's good for October. So hopefully we'll get to that in October. And then the one that I started and is my mandatory rollover is Skin Game by Jim Butcher. This is book 15 of the Dresden Files, and I really want to finish up the Dresden Files to date in the main series anyway, not any of the short stories or anything like that, in October. I meant to finish this series last year, didn't do it. I had a big old long break because I read Ghost Story and I did not like it. And plus that was, book 13 Ghost Story, and so it had been a big push to get to that point. I did enjoy, I think 14 was Cold Days, and then this is Skin Game. I did enjoy Cold Days. And so far I enjoyed this. Like I said, I read 100 pages. These are, this is a 600-page book, but they read really fast. The font's pretty big, and it's skinnier than a normal book. So they do read pretty fast. And this one was for the prompt. It was Brother Bear, and it was Brotherly Love. So this one, like I said, will be my mandatory rollover. And that way I can get to the other two, hopefully, and finish up the series in October. So now we have the books that got star rated. So first we had 2 3 stars. The first one doesn't really count. It was an extra one. I went to the thrift store and I found this one, and it just looked cute, and I just sat as I always write down the books I get, and how much I spent on them and all that. And so this is You're Invited to Mary Kate and Ashley's Hawaiian Beach Party, and this is by Nancy E. Krulik. So we have that there. And so yeah, I just sat and read this immediately. 3-star, bottom of the barrel. It was cute, but definitely it's kind of what you would expect. They hop on a submarine and go to Hawaii on a whim, which is ridiculous. Of course, no parents. But they do some stuff, and it's like, oh, we need to be safe, so we had these adults helping us or whatever. But it's them and 3 friends, I think. And the one friend keeps trying to sabotage everything everybody else wants to do, and then it turns out she's scared of the water. So it's exactly what you would expect from a Mary Kate and Ashley book, but it's really cute, and it has these actual pictures, which was fun. It's very bright, and yeah, I just enjoyed it. It was, like I said, a 3-star, and it was an extra, even though it's 48 pages and there's hardly any writing. It was extra. Next, this one I just baited. I almost DNF'd it. Then I was like, okay, I can read this, and then I was gonna give it a 2 to 2.5 stars. And then at the end, I ended up giving a 3-star, especially after I read the afterword, and it kind of explained a little bit about that time period and what this author was doing within that time period. It was like, okay, it makes more sense. So this was for the prompt of, it was a bookworm, and it was through the ages challenge. So this one always goes back into the honey jar. And for this one, I got 1886, I want to say. So any book published or that takes place in the 1880s. And this one was published in 1885. And that is King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard. And so my problem with this one is very racist, and there's kind of that class divide. So the indigenous people, they are basically servants to these rich white men, and the one guy that joins their group is kind of more outspoken and such, and so he kept kind of looking down at him, you need to know your place. And then it's kind of the reference to the way the black folk looked and such. That was kind of how you started off. There's also, he's a trophy hunter, so he's hunting elephants for ivory and such. and that really, really, really got under my skin. And so I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. That's kind of the first little part of the book. Then you kind of get where they get to this village, they're crossing the desert and they get to this village, and that one was a little bit better, but then it got very, very violent. You kind of have like um somebody trying to take over the throne, and so there's like this big war, and it's very, very violent, very bloody. The old king that they're trying to dethrone is very violent and cruel, and they have this thing where like they hunt out the witches, um and then like they have to sacrifice this girl and such. So that part I didn't. It was better than the first part, but I still really didn't enjoy it. And then finally you get to where they're discovering the mines and such, and that was a lot better. Like I enjoyed that part of the story, which is kind of what put it at a 3 star. And then plus reading the afterword, it was like, okay, you know, H. Rider Haggard himself didn't seem to be racist. It was kind of the product of the times. And it talks about how he actually, the one member of their group, is actually a hero in a sense. The one that's kind of outspoken and such. And then initially he's looking down, and then they become friends. And they form this kind of bond. And he's kind of a hero in the story, which at that time you did not have a black hero. So he was kind of ahead of his times in that sense, but at the same time this book is dated because of that, because of the time period in which it was in, and British, you know, colonization and Africa and such. And so, yeah, I struggled with it, but then it kind of made a little bit more sense at the end. And the end itself was more interesting to me. So that's why it ended up getting 3 stars, just because that, and the trophy hunting whole thing. Like, I don't care what time period it is, like that, just the waste of it. Like, they end up killing these elephants on their way, and they have no way to take the tusk. So they just kill all these elephants and bury the tusk, not knowing whether they're even going to be able to come back or not. It's like that's just a waste of life. Like, so anyway, that kind of got under my skin. But overall, like the story itself, like if you can kind of like understand that that's the time period and such, the story itself wasn't bad at all. So that got a 3 star. Then we had 9 4 stars. So that's the highest. We had 9 4 stars and 8 5 stars. So, you know, very, very good month as far as reading goes. The lowest one on the 4 star is, this was for my genre-a-thon, which was Starry September, to read either a sci-fi or a short story collection, and this is kind of both. This is Gleanings by Neil Shusterman, and this is just a bunch of short stories set in the Arc of a Scythe world, which is a trilogy that I read and really enjoyed. I'm not the biggest fan of short stories. I really struggle with them. He had some other authors that either wrote little pieces or co-authored. And so each story, if they had a different author than Neil Shusterman, it would be noted there. And so it is what it is. Like, I did like, you know, I was at least familiar with the world, but still short stories, and they're just not my favorite. There were 2 I liked. There was one called Siri, which if you've read the trilogy, you know, and I enjoyed that one. And then there was one other that I forget what it was called. Let's see if I can refresh my memory here, because I can't quite remember. Perchance to Glean. I really enjoyed that one as well. So yeah, there was a couple in here that I really enjoyed, but it's still short stories. So even though it's a 4 star, it was kind of my least favorite of the 4 stars. There's that one. Then we had one that was quite interesting, and this one we got, it was Ice Age, and it was Extinct Animals. And for this one, I chose Monster Diary by Nick Redfern. And I actually used this for Kim at Expedition Through Pages, her Tales from Two Trails game. I used this for horror, even though it's not classified nonfiction. I, you know, put on and said, like, if you won't take this, that's fine. But she said that it would work for horror. basically he goes around and he investigates like local accounts and myths of creatures or cryptids um, that people say they have encountered, and he tries to decide whether he can find proof for it or not. It kind of goes deeper than that. It has like UFOs too, and like specters, so like ghostly apparitions of certain animals and such. And you see it has a woolly mammoth on here, which is why I did it for extinct animals. He does talk about like there's an account of a saber-toothed tiger ghost that was wandering around and such. And it really had to feel, I love both like paranormal investigation shows, ghost adventures, and I also really like river monsters. And it had the feel of both those kind of times. Like, kind of had that paranormal, but you also had that river monster feel where he was going and trying to track down these stories and see if there was any proof to them and anything like that. It only got 4 stars because why I loved that aspect of it. It kind of got, especially with the UFOs, kind of conspiracy theory-ist, and I don't like that part. And the UFOs, like I was looking for the monster part, and that kind of sidetrack into UFOs and such was a little out there for me. But I really overall enjoyed the vibes of this book. Like, it's definitely gonna stick with me. Had a really good time with that. So then our next 4-star book was a rollover. So this was my mandatory read from August, and it was a bookworm, and it was featured in a show or movie, and so I used the Rory Gilmore list, and the first and the third in this series was on that list, and that's The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, so of course Lord of the Rings, and I've been trying to read the series this year, so I was happy to roll this over and actually get it read. And so yeah, this one, I enjoyed it. There's just parts where it kind of drags. It was better than The Fellowship of the Ring for sure, but it still drug a little bit for me, and it was kind of like by the end I was like, is this over yet? But overall I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the second half probably better than the first half when it was Frodo and Sam. And again, I love the movies. I think I definitely prefer the movies to the book, but I like that you get more context of certain things. So you get more context that you don't get from the movies, which I do like that for sure. So that was the next 4-star. Then we had my next extra, which I did digitally, and that was Barbarian Mind by Ruby Dixon, which is the 4th book in the Barbarian Alien series. And so I have a bunch that I found at the thrift store, but I was missing 4, and I think I'm missing 6, and then I kind of have a big chunk. And I just was kind of feeling like it, but I didn't want to read it out of order. So even though I don't like e-reading, I was like, let me see, if it's, I can get it fairly cheap on Kindle. And it was on sale, and then I had a little bit of a credit that I got it for free. So I was like, perfect. And it's such an easy read. I should be able to read it digitally, no problem. And so was just an extra that I read. Had a really good time with it. As always, they're just so cozy. And I kind of like, the ice planet, so you get that cold feel. Even though it's finally cooling off here, it is still pretty warm. Like, we've had some 90 days. So yeah, I'm ready for the cooler weather, and it was just a good time. And that's kind of what I was looking for this month, was just something that was easy to read and a good time. Next, my next 4-star was this was 2 Unusable Discs. And so this is the 2nd book in kind of a companion series, and this is The Bride Test by Helen Huang. The first book is The Kiss Quotient, and I do have the 3rd one, The Heart Principle, which I'm hoping to get to by the end of the year. And so yeah, Helen Huang is an autistic author, and she writes autistic characters and kind of their romance stories. So in this one, we're following Kai, and his mother sends for a bride from Vietnam and brings her across. And yeah, I enjoyed it. Like, I connected to Kai a lot more than I thought I would, especially he has a thing about numbers, which I have a thing about numbers. And so in particular, like, his mom sets up a wedding date for August 8th, and I felt that because my wedding date, I put a lot of thought. We did it October, so our anniversary's coming up, and it was 2017 because I wanted an odd number year, so it was either going to be 17 or 19, and I really didn't want to wait till 19. And so we got married in 2017, and then we got married on the 21st because I was looking at the Saturdays that were available, and that one, you know, it's a multiple of 3 and 7, which are two of my favorite numbers. So anyway, I really connected to the number aspect of this. And I did like the female lead as well. Like, she's a single mother, and so her whole reasoning for coming over is try to make a better life for her daughter. And so I did like that aspect of it too. She's a very determined woman, and I liked kind of how she didn't, like, even though she was doing this to make a better life for her daughter, she didn't sacrifice her morals and such. The only thing, the reason why this didn't get 5 stars for me was the miscommunication, not only because he's autistic, so there's miscommunication, but she's learning English and such, and so there's miscommunication on that front, and then, you know, the cultural difference and such. And so that's the only reason, was the miscommunication kind of got a lot towards the end, and it was just like, okay, come on. So, and Kai's whole reasoning for thinking like he can't fall in love, so he's, you know, his whole reasoning, that conflict there. Yeah. So anyway, but it got 4 stars anyway. It's so easy. Like, again, just another quick, light, fun read. So, but it did have a little bit darker aspect. Like, it deals with grief for sure. So there's that one. Then let's see here. Then we had our next 4-star, which was for another bookworm, and it was chapter titles. And so for this one, I chose The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And this one, I really enjoyed the concept of it. The execution, especially with the librarian herself, I didn't always enjoy so much. But I did kind of like the premise of it a lot, and kind of just the idea of it, and kind of her living. And I did like how it played out. I kind of saw how it was going to play out coming a little bit, but I did like how it played out. So I really liked that. I do wish, though, that the ending for the main character herself kind of played out a little bit different. I was hoping it would give us a little bit more, and it didn't. But overall, I really like it. So in this one, you have the main character, and she dies, and then she goes to this library, and she's able to live lives, like any regret she has, like she's able to live those lives and see how it would have turned out or not. It is a very, very heavy book. Definitely look at trigger warnings if you're interested in this. But yeah, overall, I actually really enjoyed the premise and such. There was just little things that I didn't really like how they were executed. But overall, I thought the story itself was really good. So then we have it was Anastasia, and it was Family Heirlooms. Had the perfect book for this. So I finally read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And I enjoyed this a lot more than I expected to. Like, I kind of thought all the hype was just a little bit overdone, and I wouldn't enjoy it that much. But I did enjoy it more than I thought. I will say the reason this didn't get 5 stars for me is there was too many characters, and some of them kind of got left behind. So like some of the side characters, there'd be a scene with them, like just like, oh yeah, there's this character, I need to put him in there for, you know, whatever. So I really think it would have been better if it focused on the brothers and the main character, who is Avery. I think that would have been better. I don't know, like, I would pick up the next one if I came across it. but I'm not necessarily all that interested. And kind of the whole situation, like with the twists and such that happens, I don't know, it didn't feel very believable to me. Like, I'm just like, really? So, like, maybe I could see if the author takes it a certain way how that would all come together, but I'm just not sure on that. So yeah, I think it just was too many characters, but I did enjoy the writing and I did enjoy the main characters themselves. Um I enjoyed kind of the connection between Avery and the brothers and such. The way they kind of interacted, I thought it would be a lot more negative, and the brothers definitely have issues and such, but it was a lot better than I was expecting, but just not quite perfect. So I'm not gonna rush out to buy the next one or anything like that. But if I got this one at a thrift store, so if I come across the next one at a thrift store, I would be interested in continuing the series. But it didn't. I enjoyed it in the moment, but not enough. It didn't intrigue me enough to go right out. And where the story's kind of going, I'm just kind of meh about. So we'll see on that one. Then we had my Nora Roberts book. So this is her newest release, and it was Rabbit, and it was a free choice. So this one goes back in the honey jar too. And so this came out in May, and I haven't had a chance to read it. And that's Identity by, of course, Nora Roberts. She's my favorite author, so even though this wasn't a 5-star for me, she's an author I can just read, and it's just comforting. I'm very familiar with kind of her plot set out and the rhythm of the plot and her writing and such. And so this one is very much like her other romantic suspenses. It's getting to the point where, yeah, the characters may change and such, but the story is pretty much the same. But I still enjoy them regardless. So that's why it didn't get a 5-star from me, because it's very much the same as some of her other romantic suspenses. It didn't stand out in any way, but I still had just such a good time. So easy to read. So this one, you have Morgan, and she's an army brat, and she ends up meeting this guy and kind of dates him for like a week, and it turns out he steals identities and he's a serial killer. Well, her friend and roommate ends up being at the house wrong time, and so her friend gets murdered and he steals her identity, and so she has to kind of go back, and she's living with her mom and grandma and trying to rebuild her life, but of course he's still on the loose, and so the story's not over from there. And then it is a romance, so you have the family she works for, one of the grandsons is her love interest, and I really liked his character too, because he's kind of more button up, a little bit more standoffish, but yeah, overall, good time. I really enjoyed it, but because it's just said her romantic suspenses are getting to the point where they're the same story, just different characters and locations. So then our last 5-star or 4-star read, sorry, our last 4-star read was for it's Rumpelstiltskin, and it's the Brothers Grimm. And so for this one, I chose Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. And this one I debated. I almost gave it 5 stars, but then I was like, I just can't do it. This one, you have Miriam, and she is a moneylender's daughter. And she kind of takes over because her father is very kind-hearted and just letting people take advantage. And so she takes over and starts collecting money, and then she's kind of boasting that she can turn silver into gold. And there's the Starik, which is like a fae people, and the king overhears her, and they want gold, so they generally raid villages for gold and everything, and so he overhears her. And then there is a like peasant girl that their father owes them money, but he doesn't have any money to pay, so she starts working for them, and she has 2 brothers. And then there's also the duke's daughter, who comes into play. So you have the 3 girls, and really it only needed to be the 2 girls for the story to work, but I did like the addition of Wanda, who is the peasant daughter. I did like her addition, and that was fine. It kept jumping back between point of views of them. but there was no clear distinction when it would change. Like sometimes she would say, like when it was Wanda, she would be talking or thinking about Miriam, and so then you'd be like, okay, this is Wanda. But other times it wouldn't have that, so it would take a minute for me to figure out whose point of view I was on. And then it added in 3 others. So there was 6 point of views total in this book. And that was just way, way too many. But I did like, as the story progressed, you kind of have this fire and ice dynamic and winter versus summer dynamic, which I really, really liked. And so yeah, overall, I actually really enjoyed it. I just think there was too many viewpoints, and they weren't very well transitioned for me. But I did like the writing style and the world, the atmosphere of the world was spot on. Like I loved it. It was again kind of cold and wintry for the most part, and I absolutely loved that. So definitely interest. This was my first Naomi Novik. I have A Deadly Education by her, so I'm looking forward to trying that one as well. So yeah, again, not an author that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go pick up every book I can get my hands on, but an author, if I come across them, I'm definitely interested in reading more from. So that was my last 4-star. Then we have my 5 stars, and so bottom of the barrel, just it is what it is. It's a children's book, and for this one we got Lady and the Tramp, and it was Stray Animal, and so I chose The One and Only Ruby for this by Katherine Applegate. The One and Only Bob, which is the second book in the series, would have been perfect because it's Bob's story and he's the stray and he's right here on the cover. But since he is part of the series and he was a stray, I went ahead and counted this for that prompt. So in this one you have Ruby's story. So the whole series you have Ivan, who's a gorilla, Bob the dog, and then Ruby the elephant. And they are originally, well, Ivan and Ruby are originally part of like a exposition at a mall, and then they get saved and they go to the zoo. So in the first one, they're still at that mall exhibition, and it's not a very good place. And then you have, they get saved and Bob gets a home and everything. So these definitely tug at your heartstrings. And it's really actually kind of interesting that I read King Solomon's Mine and then I read this one. And there's one other that I read that kind of talks about, showing gratitude for other living things. And this one kind of deals with trophy hunting and poaching and such. So really, really cute stories. They have like cute little pictures in them. Just really tug on your heartstrings. They're both sad but heartwarming, and these are a great way, like if you do have children, reading these and talking about animal welfare and conservation and such. These are a great way to open up that conversation for sure. So really, really cute. Absolutely love that whole series. Next was kind of a surprising one for me. So this one was a booktube pick. Again, we have another bookworm. And for this one, I just went and put booktube in the search. And then the first video, it was a shorts from Sasha E. Sloan. Leave that linked down below. But I just pulled up that short and she was what I'm reading, and there was a whole stack of books, and I knew this one, I had seen it at the thrift store, so I thought, sweet, if it's still there, I'll go with that one, and it was, and that's Open Book by Jessica Simpson, and this was written with Kevin, I'll tell you here in a second, Kevin Carr O'Leary, and so yeah, this one surprised me. Like I said, I was kind of intrigued by it, but it wasn't one that I was super interested in. If it hadn't been at the thrift store, I don't know that I would have gone with this one. But this is probably one of the better written memoirs that I have read, honestly. I was very pleasantly surprised by it. And the way she did it, so like when she was talking about her romance with Nick, like there was no bitterness in it at all. Like it was like you were reading a young girl falling in love for the first time, which really impressed me because, obviously she's writing this later in life, and so you would expect there to be a little hint of that, but it really wasn't there. And she takes you from the time she's very young all the way through when she's pregnant with her third, I want to say, daughter, and writing the story. And yeah, I was surprisingly well written. You definitely kind of get that, you know, I will say I definitely had set in my mind, certain assumptions about her, and she kind of pokes fun at that a little bit, like her ditziness, and that definitely comes across. But it's like sometimes she did it because it was just funny, like, and she knew people, but she's kind of one like you're laughing at her, but she knows you are, and she kind of takes control of that. And so I actually really enjoyed it. Like I said, I was really, really surprised. It is very heavy on like God and religion because she grew up in the Bible Belt, grew up very religious, and so that's a big part of her life. But yeah, surprisingly, one of the better ones that I have read. So yeah, it got 5 stars. So there is that. Then we had my other rollover from August, which this one I wasn't mad about. I thought it was a good one to read in September, and now I kind of wish I had saved it for November, which I am going to reread this one, and I'm going to read it next November. But this is Pocahontas, and it was Strong Ties to Nature. So for that one, I chose Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This is a nonfiction. It is. I was reading some of the reviews, and it did say, that it was slow and repetitive at times, and I do agree with that. I absolutely agree with that, but I loved it. Like, it worked for me. And so in this one, it's part like she's an ecologist, so it really has a big, heavy focus on nature, but it also has a heavy focus on Native American history and lessons, and teachings and such, and how that ties into nature. And then it's part memoir, so like there's one little section where it's kind of about motherhood and her lessons, in her own life regarding motherhood that she's learned from like nature and Native American teachings and such. And I read this very slowly. On average, I read 30 to 40 pages a day. I think there was one day I read 60 something pages, and then at the very end I had 84 pages left, so I just pushed through it. But this, like, each day I read it, it was just kind of like a breath of fresh air. Like, it really harps on gratitude and reciprocity. I'm probably butchering that. I struggled with it when I was reading too, and that word is mentioned over and over and over again. But just it's just like it really, like, each day I felt at peace after I was done reading it. And I'm so anxious as a person in general, and these last few months have been so rough, and so just to take a moment to slow down and read this and just be grateful, like show gratitude for what I have and what the earth has given me and such. Like, it's just a beautiful book. I've seen this on booktube and talked about and such, and everybody seems to love it, and I understand why. I'm really glad I was able to finally read this. And like I said, next Thanksgiving, I'm going to be reading this again, and I'm going to try to annotate it as well. My favorite lesson or story from this, or essay, was The Three Sisters, which talks about corn and beans and squash and how they work together. Like, I absolutely love that one. And so yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Definitely a 5-star for me. The only reason it's down a little lower is because of that repetitiveness. And it was a little bit slower, but I just took my time, like I said, just about 30 to 40 pages a day when I would read it. So then we had this one. So this was for my character, which I got Rabbit, and that was a free pick. And so I chose Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I've been wanting to read this since it came out, and I picked it up like a few months ago and just was sitting there. And so this was the easy one, especially for my birthday month. I love this. Like, I really, really enjoyed this one. So you have the main character, Elizabeth, and she works as a chemist, but it's the 1960s, I want to say. And so she's not taken very seriously. So then she ends up hosting this cooking show. Supper at 6, I think it's called. And there's a dog in here named 630, which I loved. I loved kind of the love story and the um again, you kind of had a little bit of like miscommunication, but it worked. Like it wasn't miscommunication that got really annoying. It was kind of it was cute and it worked. But yeah, her love story, and then she has tragedy and such, and she's just working this job to take care of her daughter, but she's not happy with it and whatnot, so she struggles with that, and then fulfilling this role. And I actually used this one. It wasn't officially because for Kim from Expedition Through Pages, her Tales from Two Trails, the first prompt was Dictionary Word of the Day, and she went to 2 different sites. And so for this one, I did Consensus Gentium, I think, which is just basically the people's overall viewpoint on things, like the consensus of the general public or the people. And with this one, women in that time period had a very distinct role. That was the consensus. So this one didn't officially count for the game, but I did mention it because it worked for that prompt. Even though I did the other one was Clique, and I did a different book for that, and that was my official, for the thing, for the game itself. So anyway, really enjoyed that one. Absolutely loved it. Next, we had another extra one, and this one I had gotten for myself in August as an early birthday present because I wanted to read it at my birthday, and that's The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, which is the first one in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. It's a duology, and there's a little novella as well, and did not love this as much as I loved the War of Lost Hearts trilogy. Like, the War of Lost Hearts trilogy was everything I wanted in a book. My favorite trilogy to date right now, and I absolutely loved it. This one, I still really enjoyed it. I like the writing. Like, she's such an easy writer, even though her books are chunkier. Like, this one's not too bad, but the books are chunkier, but they're super fast. Like, it's super easy to read her writing. And so yeah, there was that. I thought with the vampire element, I would really like it. There's kind of this competition element as well. But I didn't love it as much as I love the War of Lost Hearts trilogy. And I think I just wasn't as invested in the characters themselves. Like, I did like the main character, I forget their name, but Araya. I did like her, and then Rain is her love interest. And so she is a human living in this vampire world, and there's 3 different, there's like the Bloodborn, the Nightborn, and the Shadowborn, I want to say. And the Nightborn has 2 houses, which are at war against each other. And so you have that aspect as well. And her vampire father, who took her from the rubble and such, has been training her for this competition, in which if you win the competition, you get 1 wish from the goddess of night, which is Nyaxia. And so that's the whole point. She wants to make a wish so she can not be prey in a predator world, essentially. And so the bulk of the story, they're in this house and they're doing this competition, but on the outside of the house, there's political upheaval. So that's also going on. And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I enjoyed it a lot, and it was obviously a 5-star, but I think the bar was set so high with the War of Lost Hearts trilogy that it was just a little bit of a letdown that I didn't enjoy this as much, because I thought I would enjoy this more with the vampire aspect, but I didn't. But that's okay, because I still loved it, still really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read the next one, which hopefully I'll be able to get to in November. So that was an extra one that I read. Then we had, let's see here. Oh, this one was so cute. So this one was for Velocity of Atlantis, and it was underwater. And so for this one, I went with A Field Guide to Mermaids by Emily B. Martin. This was so adorable. I absolutely loved it. So again, you kind of have that ecology aspect to it. It's written as if like she's talking about different types of mermaids and their habitats. But she also includes like different like actual creatures. So like this one is the Everglades in Florida, and you have a manatee and a horseshoe crab there. So that was, you know, she includes like actual animals that would be in this habitat that the mermaids are in. And yeah, I just really liked it. I like how it was presented. And it has like these little, like this one's mermaids colors and patterns in between. And then also like if you were looking for these mermaids, some questions to ask yourself. And it was just so cute. And then at the end, it includes this little thing like, what kind of mermaid are you? So I forget what mine was. I want to say I was, what was I? I think I was a flatland river mermaid, if I'm remembering right. But anyway, it was really cute. So you just find out what kind of mermaid you would be. And it was just adorable. I love this. I think this is going to be a reread each year as well. It's obviously super quick. But yeah, whether you're a kid or an adult, that one was so good. Then our next 5-star was another extra book. And this one I also got for my birthday. And I wanted to read it right away. And so that was Foxglove by Adeline Grace. I love this one even more than Belladonna. So this is the second one. I don't know if it's called the Belladonna series or if it has an actual name. But Belladonna was the first one. And in Belladonna, you have the main character and she's kind of followed by death everywhere she goes. And so it's kind of that. And then she goes to her last relatives after her current relative dies. And there's kind of a mystery, like the mom of the house has died, and it's like, how did she die? And then her cousin's being poisoned, and so she's trying to solve the mystery of who's poisoning them. And it's kind of like a whodunit mystery aspect to that one and this one. There's another mystery with how the other one ended. There's a mystery to solve in this one as well. And this one, you see her cousin a little bit more, and we are introduced to the brother of death, which is Fate. And I loved everything about this book. And the way it ended and set up for the next one, I'm so excited for. The only problem with reading a series as it's coming out is that you have to wait for the next book. But I am really, really excited to see what the next book brings. I forget what it's called. Wisteria is what it's called. And I can't wait for that one to come out, because where I think it's going to go, I think I'm going to love that one even more. Like, it just keeps getting better and better. And these covers are stunning. Like, absolutely love this. Like, really glad I got it for my birthday and was able to pick it up. So there is that one. And then the last book of the month that was the top of the barrel and a 5-star read. It was actually The Fox and the Hound. And so I had Anya pick this. She was my birthday present 3 years ago. She's laying behind me right here. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I wish I had read this sooner, but at the same time, it was kind of the perfect book to read now, like at this point in my life. And I read it. I started this one around my birthday. I wanted to read it around my birthday, so I started this one that weekend. And I just loved everything about this. So you have Addie, and in desperation, she ends up praying to a god that comes out after dark, and she basically she makes a deal, and so she lives until she no longer needs her life or wants her life, and which then it will go to this god or devil, whatever you want to call him. But he makes it so she just wants to be free. She doesn't want the responsibility. She doesn't want to get married. And so he makes it where nobody can remember her until one day somebody does. And so it's just kind of her story. Like, I just love the character of Addie and the strength and like the cunning of her. Because yeah, she made this deal in desperation, but then she makes it work for her, and she finds little ways to leave her mark on the world and everything like that. and the way it ended too, like it was just like, okay, come on, Addie. And so yeah, I really loved Addie, and I loved everything. Like there's her loneliness, like you can really feel that in the beginning. Um, and I don't know, I guess I really connected to that because like being autistic, sometimes it can be very lonely and isolating, and so I can kind of connect to that a lot. And so the first day I read this, it actually made me cry, and I had to just put it down. Like I read about 100 pages, I think. I was just like, okay, I need to take a break. But then it got better because then somebody remembers her, and she's able to kind of have a life a little bit and such. So really, really good. Really good. Definitely maybe a little bit slower. I saw some critiques that it was slower, but in the best possible way, in my opinion. So absolutely love that. So that was my final 5-star read. I'm so glad I was finally able to get to that one. As far as my top 3 go, so first is going to be Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer. I really just, the feelings that left me with. So each time I do my top 3. So top 3 doesn't necessarily equal star rating. Star rating is the enjoyment I got out of it, where top 3 is the impact it left with me. And so I just do the top 3, and then I list 4 things that is why it's in the top 3 for me. And so for Braiding Sweetgrass, it was the nature aspect. I love anything that deals with like ecology or conservation, and the fact, it just was basically a love letter to nature and gratitude for what the world gives us. The native history and the lessons, I absolutely love that. I think there's a lot we can learn from native teachings, and then just a little bit of the history of these different tribes and such was added in there, which I really liked. Just a peaceful feel it gave me. Like every time I would read a little section, I just, like I said, I just felt at peace. That anxiety was like, why am I worrying about this when I have what I need, And so I really like that. And just the reminder to have gratitude for your life and the things you're given. Like, I really like that little reminder there. My number 2 spot is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And Addie herself, like I said, she's such a strong character. Like, even in despair, like, she never gives up. And a little sidetrack here. Cinderella is my favorite, like, Disney, like, story, or fairy tale story. And it's because, even when she's at her lowest, Cinderella always has hope. And I've always really liked that. And so that was the same thing with Addie. Like, she always still had hope. Like, she's always still appreciated, like, why would I give in to you when I can experience this, And I really, really like that. The connection she made. So even when people were no longer could remember her, like, she made connections with people. Yeah, it was more one-sided because they couldn't remember her or the day they spent together or anything like that, so it was more one-sided, but she still made those little connections with people, despite the fact that they couldn't remember her, and I really liked that aspect. The joy and hope she had. So again, she never gave up, and she had a joy for life. Like, she wanted to be free, and she wanted to experience things, and that's the whole reason she kind of made this deal. And so at first, yeah, she really struggled, but then she grasped onto that, like, I am free. I can go live and experience these things. And then just kind of the workaround. Like I said, she found little ways to work around to leave her little marks, even though she couldn't, like, write or anything. Like, she couldn't physically change the world. She found little ways to leave her mark, which I thought was really cool. And then the third one was actually one of the 4 stars, and that was Monster Diary by Nick Redfern. The investigative feel, like I said, I love, like, the paranormal shows and such, and like river monsters that are investigating and such. I absolutely love those. So that feel to it, I ate it up. I loved it. The local myths and account, like, I like that. He's finding these people who, like, firsthand accounts, unlike just myths in certain locales and such, that they're known for and whatnot. The debunking aspect, so like in one part, he's talking about these ills, and like, could it just be these eels, like these giant eels that are in the canal or whatever? And so I kind of like that aspect too. Like, it just wasn't like, oh, this has to be real. Like, what could it be that maybe has an explanation? And then just the cryptids and the, like, I'm not a big UFO, like, I'm really into that. I'm more into like cryptids and myths and such. But I did kind of like the aspect of the UFOs here. Like I said, the only thing I didn't like was the conspiracy theory part of that. But I did really enjoy that overall. So that's why it got 3, because it's going to stick with me for sure. And then I did haul some books, mostly thrifted books. I didn't spend that much, but I did get like 2 books, I think, for my birthday. And so total, I ended up hauling 28 books. So that is my wrap up. As always, a longer one, but I read a lot of books. Like 19 books total is what I read. And like I said, only 3 of those I didn't get to, which is absolutely amazing. And really, I added on 3 others, so it kind of balanced out anyway. But that is it. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you're interested in reading any of these, or what your favorite book from September was. I'm gonna go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.